Hello one and all, welcome to the channel that is Jono's Graveyard Jaunts. I first became aware of this man's name whilst watching an episode of Flog It hosted by Paul Martin, who happened to be filming in Nottingham at the time. And not only was this man's life truly fascinating, but also his incredibly elaborate and ornate headstone with the amazing inscription on it is also. He is buried in St Mary's Rest Garden, Bath Street, Nottingham. Now the person who features in today's video is a man whose real name was William Abednego Thompson, who became known as Bendigo. Now he was born on October 11th, 1811 in Nottingham, and he was known as the Muhammad Ali of his time because not only did he possess a very clever mouth, but he also had a razor-sharp wit in addition to amazing hand speed, agility and power as a pugilist. He was baptised at St Mary's Church, Nottingham on the 17th of October 1811. I'm also going to visit the site where Bendigo's retirement cottage used to stand on Wollaston Road in Beeston. I will also visit the pub named after him, now derelict but still standing, located on Thurgarton Street in Sneinton, Nottingham, formerly known as the Bendigo. I will also visit a place where Bendigo's final resting place is located at St Mary's Garden on 11 Bath Street, Nottingham. Now for our European and international audiences, and for those of you who may not know where Nottinghamshire or indeed Nottingham is in relation to the UK, I've attached a couple of maps. Now in the first map, the part highlighted red shows where Nottingham County sits in relation to the UK. And the second map shows where Nottingham city centre sits in relation to the county of Nottinghamshire itself. Now the area we're looking at is classed as the East Midlands as it sits in the middle of the United Kingdom and slightly to the east, hence geographical classification of the East Midlands. Before we get into it, I would like to thank all of my subscribers for their continued support. If you do want me to do a feature on anyone in particular, please put a request in the comments section. And before we get into today's video again, can I please ask you to like and subscribe to the channel so the channel can grow and we can venture further afield to ever more interesting places. So Bendigo was one of 6 children and he had a younger sister, Mary, who died at the age of 4. His father died when he was only 15 and accompanied by his mother he was sent to the Nottingham Workhouse. After leaving the workhouse, Bendigo sold oysters on the streets of Nottingham before landing a position as an iron turner, a job that greatly enhanced his muscular build. Now by the age of 18, Bendigo began fighting to provide for his family. He defeated his first 8 opponents, including the champion of the nearby town of Bingham. And by the age of 21, Bendigo became a professional prize fighter and the details of his contest began to be recorded. Bendigo was indeed a southpaw, and once on a bet he is said to have thrown half a brick over the River Trent with his left hand. Although being barely 177 centimetres tall, i.e. 5 foot 10 inches, he compensated for this, for his lack of weight, with an incredible ability to punch hard and fast, and was said to be devoid of any fear. He was very agile, earning the name Bendy because of his constant bobbing and weaving around the ring. And his nickname evolved, and Bendy, in combination with his middle name Abednego, he became Bendigo. And that was his actual speed and agility that won him fights. It was Bendigo's personality and sense of humour which endeared him to the crowd. He would make up rhymes about his opponents during fights and distract them with the insults and telltales of their wives and mothers while making funny faces at them. And this was very reminiscent of Muhammad Ali in his heyday, taunting both Sonny Liston and George Foreman. And it was not long before Bendigo was drawing crowds as large as 10,000 to his illicit fights held secretly out of towns in barns or fields.
You can see, guys, the big red building we're looking at is called the Anglo Mill. It's a Victorian property. It was built in 1892. It's a Grade 2 listed building, and just look at the architecture on that with the castle theme. And that's what I love about Victorian architecture. Not only was it robustly constructed, but also very decorative, ornate. If you look at the facades with the castle feature and the turrets. Now the building we can see on that side, that's the remnant of the cottage that Bendigo moved into when he wanted to adopt a more quieter life and get away from his drunken brawling, basically. So you see where that chimney is, and those, you can see the remnants. That's the outside of the building. And what we're going to do is go up to the plaque on the wall and have a look at that, and we can see a blue plaque to commemorate. That's the site of the original cottage. So obviously they're the remnants of the original building that we've just shown you. And we're just going to go up and have a look now. You see that blue plaque on the wall, and there's the outer wall of the cottage that we've just shown you there. I'll just take that all the way up to the top so you can see. Just there. And here's the plaque. It's a Bendigo. William Thompson Bendigo, 1811 to 1880, All England champion, bare knuckle prize fighter, reformed drunkard turned evangelist, retired to a cottage on the site. So this is basically Beeston on Wollaston Road. Okay, and here's the Anglo Mill. If you know anything about the history of Nottingham, it was synonymous with the lace industry, and that's why they needed huge mills like this. But just look at the decoration on the outside. And I'll just pan up to the let's look at that, it's beautiful, isn't it? With a castle theme throughout. So this is the Anglo Mill.
Now, bare knuckle fighting itself was very popular during the freewheeling days of the late 18th to mid 19th century, and the only rules that governed these prize fights had to be drawn up in 1743 by a Thames waterman called Jack Broughton, remaining the only written rules for over a century. And they stated that a round lasted for no set length of time, but ended when a fighter was knocked down or thrown to the ground by brawling. And once floored, the fallen fighter had 30 seconds to come up to, and I quote, the scratch, a marker set in the centre of the ring. Now, Bendigo's career was punctuated by his fierce rivalry with the Hucknall-born boxer Ben Cornt, and on the 21st of July 1835, the first two met to split a purse of £25. Now, the fight itself lasted 35 minutes with 22 rounds, each round being called when either boxer's knee touched the ground. Now, Bendigo was 19 kilograms, 42 pounds, 3 stone lighter and 15 centimetres, i.e. 6 inches shorter, and he got into difficulties during the fight and started to stumble frequently. Now that and his continuous laughter and insults frustrated Cornt, who in the last round struck Bendigo while he was sitting on his second knee in his corner, costing Cornt the match on a foul. A reporter present at the bout wrote of Cornt that he was full of trickery and treachery, he had no ethics, end of quote. And Bendigo, quote, as steady and as poisonous as a rattlesnake with about the same ethics. Now, over the next 2 years, Bendigo fought 3 bouts, first dispatching the renowned fighter John Leachman of Bradford in a 52-round contest, before moving to Newcastle the following year to defeat Charlie Langham in 51 rounds. Now, a few months later, Bendigo responded to a letter in a newspaper from a Liverpudlian by the name of William Looney, challenging any man in the world for a £200 stake and a £200 side. Now, the two met on the 13th of June 1838 on a hill known as Chapel on Lifrith, the halfway point between their hometowns. The fight lasted 92 rounds and they fought for over 2 hours. In 1839, Bendigo won the first English championship by beating James Deaf Burke. Now, Bendigo retired briefly but then returned to win the disputed title of Champion of England from Cornt in 1845, and this time it was Cornt who committed the foul. And now, because fist fighting was a breach of the peace, Bendigo was arrested after most fights. Although he enjoyed his quiet life, Thompson, or rather Bendigo, accepted a challenge from young Tom Paddock from Redditch, and on the 5th of June 1850, the 39-year-old Bendigo began his last fight. In two minds as to whether or not to accept the challenge, his 82-year-old mother encouraged him by saying, and I quote, "I tell you this, Bendy, if you don't take up the fight, you're a coward, and I tell you more, if you don't fight him, I'll take up the challenge myself."
So here we are, guys, at the Bendigo. Obviously it's now derelict. It was named after Bendigo in 1957, formerly called the Hermitage. It's located at the top of Thurgarton Street in Nottinghamshire, in a place called Sneinton. So we just go around the front, let you have a look at it. And you can see on the top there.
I swear up to you. I was in the chip first.
The statue of Bendigo. And there we are. So it's now derelict. There's so many pubs gone to the wall, as I'm sure you're aware, and going to the wall, not just as a result of COVID, but just generally. And this is obviously another victim. And we lose part of our heritage and our history when we do lose these pubs. So I don't know what will happen to this, whether they'll knock it down completely or turn it into another pub, but I just think it's sad. So there we are, guys. Formerly called a Hermitage and named the Bendigo after the great man himself in 1957.
After his retirement from boxing, Bendigo slid into alcoholism, joining his former supporters, the Nottingham Lambs, in drunken rampages. As a result, he was imprisoned 28 times in the House of Correction on St John Street, Nottingham. However, Bendy's story was by no means over. In 1872, he visited an evangelical meeting at the Mechanics' Institute, and this is where he saw the error of his ways and he was converted. After that, he spoke regularly at revivalist meetings and more than once, according to legend, found his boxing skills very useful in pacifying a rowdy audience. Now, to sober himself up, Bendigo moved to Beeston to get away from his, and I quote, old crowd. He moved into a little cottage on Wollerton Road in Beeston, where he seems to have settled down. Now, the cottage was pulled down later and the Anglo Scotane Mills was built on the site. Now, Nottingham, at the height of the Industrial Revolution, became synonymous with the lace industry, both nationally and internationally, and hence the need for mills producing lace. In the course of his pugilistic career, Bendigo lost only one fight, a defeat to Benjamin Cornt in 1838. Cornt, however, outweighed him by more than 40 pounds. Now, Bendigo died on the 21st of August 1880, aged 69 years old, after falling down the stairs of his home in Beeston. The fall fractured his ribs and punctured his lung, but he hung on for 7 more weeks before he finally died. Now, his funeral procession was a mile long and thousands lined the streets, including many nationally famous people of the period. Even the Times newspaper published his obituary, which was normally reserved for very illustrious people. He was buried in his mother's grave, marked by the stone in the former burial ground of St Mary's Rest Garden on Bass Street, and is the only memorial not to have been moved during redevelopment.
So here we are, guys, in St Mary's Rest Garden on Bass Street in Nottingham, and this is the final resting place of Bendigo. William Thompson Bendigo of Nottingham, who died August the 23rd, 1880, aged 69 years. And this is a great epitaph for him. In life always, brave in fighting like a lion, in death like a lamb, tranquil in Zion. And that is a great epitaph for him. And we'll go around the side, guys, and let you have a look. So it's very easy to get to. Once you walk into the main gate, it's facing you at the top of a hill on the right hand side, and you can't miss it. And that's so appropriate, isn't it? Having a lion for an incredibly brave and fearless bare knuckle boxer who reigned supreme. Rest in peace, Bendigo.
So what about Bendigo's legacy then? So a public house in Sneinton, Nottinghamshire was named after his famous resident. The Old Wrestlers pub was converted to Bendigo's in 1957 to commemorate his life. And Nottingham tram users will also be familiar with tram 207, which was obviously named after the boxer. And there's even a place called the City of Greater Bendigo in Victoria, southeast Australia. Now, Bendigo certainly lived an eventful life and was indeed a true Nottinghamshire legend.